So if we had less regulations and more saving, we'd have higher productivity. That's the way to raise wages. Not only do we have minimum wage, we have all sorts of mandated fringe benefits, health and this and welfare. I mean, Walmart is accused of not having as many fringe benefits as anyone else, and yet when they open up a new store and they want 500 workers, they'll get 5,000 people waiting for those jobs because they're very productive there. What is Obama doing? He's trying to bribe people into hiring. He says, if you hire a person who's been unemployed for a long time, we'll give you a tax break or we'll give you a subsidy. He has to ask, well, why are they hiring in the first place? The reason they're not hiring in the first place is to hire someone is like getting married to them. And with the divorce laws, you know, you dare not fire one, and you dare not fire a black person because you're accused of God knows what. So you don't hire them in the first place, and not just blacks, you don't hire anyone because you're afraid. So what we've got to do is reduce regulations if we want to have more hiring. Another question is quo bono, who benefits? If the law is so despicable and so nasty that it picks upon the least and the lowest of us, the poorest people, the people with the lowest skills, and makes them unemployed, that's a pretty vicious thing. Who benefits from this, and why are they doing this? Who benefits from it are mainly unions. Because when the union asks for a wage increase from, say, $20 to $25 an hour, the first thing on the employer's mind is, well, I got to get out of the suddenly more expensive factor of production and into a relatively cheaper substitute. It's as if you're making rowboats, and you can make rowboats out of plastic, wood, or metal. And all of a sudden, wood prices rise. Well, you're going to make rowboats out of the other things. You tend to move toward the relatively cheaper inputs. Well, unskilled labor is a substitute for skilled labor. There are many ways to skin the cat. There are many ways to produce the shoes or the bushel. And if all of a sudden the skilled laborers want more money, you try to get fewer of them and hire unskilled workers. The union doesn't much like that. In the old days, what they would do is call them scabs and beat them up, which seems to be like hate crime, although they don't usually apply that. Nowadays, they have labor legislation which compels the employer to deal fairly, quote unquote, with the union, whether he'd like to be divorced from them instead of dealing fairly with them. I got into a little debate with a fellow Austro-libertarian economist, and I said, we ought to really put in jail people responsible for the minimum wage law. Because what they're doing is making it impossible for poor, unskilled people to work. And the guy said, well, with friends of the market like Walter Block, we don't need enemies because this is just berserk and crazy. And I said, well, why not? What do you think we should do with these guys who foment the minimum wage? And he didn't answer. Well, I think it's just. And look, when we win and have a libertarian Nuremberg trial, I tell you, those guys responsible for the minimum wage law are going to have a lot to answer for, because they're vicious criminals. They're picking on the weakest members of our society, and they're not letting them work. And when you don't let them work, you create havoc. Okay, I think I've been about 10 minutes on minimum wage law. Let me do the Food and Drug Administration. Here was the second question that Ron Paul was asked, and he was given his proverbial 12 seconds to answer before they interrupt him. And what the questioner said to Ron was, well, what about pharmaceuticals? A new pharmaceutical company comes out with a new drug. Should we trust them? Or should we have the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration? And well, I would say, better to trust them than to trust the FDA, because if they screw up, they can go bankrupt. Whereas if the FDA screws up, they can't go bankrupt. Look, the reason we have reasonably good paper clips, there's one here, paper clip, pens, ties, wristwatches, shirts, ties, shoes, whatever, hot dogs, is because if you don't make a good one, you go broke. So the remaining ones are pretty good. There's no pen crisis, there's no wristwatch crisis, there's no tie crisis. If you can't go broke, then you get a crisis, like FEMA. I was in New Orleans. I'm now from New Orleans. I've been there for 10 years. I was during Katrina. And FEMA, between FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers, they killed around 1,900 people, which is horrible. But worse is these I was going to say a word beginning with B, but I don't think I should say that. These illegitimate people are still in business. Isn't that horrible? They killed 1,900 people of my fellow citizens around New Orleans and lower Mississippi, and they're still in bloody business. The Army Corps of Engineers, if the Mississippi River was owned by a private company, well, I don't want to get into that too much, but that's a more radical view, we would have better Mississippi River running. And what FEMA mainly did was made it impossible for anyone to come help us. They would, before the doctors could come in, they would make them take lessons in sexual awareness or something like that. It was just horrible. All sorts of crazy things that FEMA made people do. There were luxury liners coming with 500 rooms to allow the homeless people to live in their boat. No, FEMA said, we got it under control. What FEMA did was make it impossible to help, to bring help from all over. Then there was this thing about price gouging. Now we know that when there's a shortage, prices rise. And this is a very salutary thing, because when prices rise, in addition to benevolence, now we have profit incentive to bring stuff to New Orleans to help us. And we also know that at the old low prices, the first 200 people in Walmart will take it all. Whereas with higher prices, they'll leave some for the people in the back of the line. But they had this thing called price gouging. See, if the price rises, it's a signal for help to come in. It's like a cry in the wilderness. And if you have a price gouging law, it's like a maximum decibel limit for cries in the wilderness. Getting back to the FDA, what we need is an institution to certify food and drugs that can go broke when they make a mistake. These people supported thalidomide. That was the drug that created birth defects. They're still in business. Although they got really scared from their thalidomide experience. That was one type of error. And now they create the other type of error. Anytime a new drug comes in, it takes millions of, did I say millions? Billions of dollars and tens of years to get the thing approved. So meanwhile, there are a lot of people who could benefit from these drugs and are not allowed to try them. Look, perform the following mental experiment. Suppose that you are a sick person and you now have 100 different possible cures or 100 possible remedies. And the FDA says, well, you can't use 40 of them. You're limited to 60. Have they helped you? It seems preposterous, the thing they've helped you. What they've done is cut off options. How does that help you? It's hard to see how that could help. In the free market, in the free enterprise system, probably what you would have would be a competitive industry in charge of certifying the quality of drugs and food. For example, we have Fitch, Standard & Poor, and Moody's for drugs. Now, they've been overturned by the government. They didn't do a good job, but that's the kind of a thing where they could certify drugs. Or Good Housekeeping Seal of Approval, kosher foods, Consumer Reports, testing laboratories, things like that. And then if somebody approves of this horrible drug, well, then they'll go broke. Whereas if the FDA approves of the horrible drug, they don't go broke. They stay in business. They get more money because, you know, we need more money because we approved this horrible drug. That's no way to run a railroad. That's no way to run an economy. The free enterprise way is the way to do it. So when they asked Ron Paul, well, surely you favor the FDA. Somebody's got to make sure that the pharmacies tell the truth. Well, one, they have more of an incentive to tell the truth than the FDA. And two, we could have an industry, a competitive certification industry that could help us much better on that. Okay, thanks. One of the things that I really hate, that I find the most despicable about the FDA is when you're on your last legs and the doctors give you a month to live and they have this new experimental drug that might or might not save you. These bastards, I shouldn't use the word, but I can't help myself, they say you can't use it. You can't have a crapshoot. Here I'm dying, the doctors gave me a month to live, and there's this new experimental drug that's going to take 15 years for them to determine whether I can use it or not, and they won't let me use it. If that's not bastards, I don't know what is. They're murderers. This is despicable. So when Ron Paul comes out against the FDA, and he's got 45 seconds to explain it, he can't do as good a job. Now, there's a whole literature on this. If you want to acquaint yourself with it, just email me, wblock@loino.edu, and I will give you more bibliography on this than you want. One last point, there's a guy named Gabriel Kolko, K-O-L-K-O, who was a Marxist historian, but he's pretty good on the early days of the FDA. And you'd think that the reason the FDA came into appearance or came into existence in the 1890s during the Progressive period is because the government had enough of meat packers who were giving us bad meat and food people and drug people giving us bad stuff. No. The FDA came into effect because the leading big companies were losing market share to the small ones. And they kept losing share to the smaller competitors, and then what they did is they created the FDA in order to stop those guys. First they put all of their people in the FDA, and secondly, the FDA makes you fill out paperwork, a lot of paperwork. And big companies have a competitive advantage or comparative advantage in filling out paperwork. So that was the inception of it. So the FDA is bad from root to branch. The minimum wage law is bad from root to branch. And we, libertarians, do not have to apologize for opposing both of them. Thanks for your attention.